Welcome to our Next Economy Living mini-series. Over the next few weeks, we'll be diving into how folks are creating a values-aligned life in areas like food resiliency, housing, personal health, and more. If these conversations are resonating with you, we invite you to join us for our first ever Next Economy Living workshop on August 25th, where we'll explore these topics in compassionate community with practical tips and resources on how to take the next step in your own life design. Visit bit.ly/Next Economy Living to learn more. Hello, I'm a partner at Lift Economy, Erin Axelrod here with my guest today, Cheryl Whilby. She, her, those are her pronouns, and she's the communications director for Soulfire Farm. So Cheryl first discovered her passion for food systems during her senior year of undergrad and studied food insecurity issues and how these matters disproportionately impact BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, Person of Color communities. She moved to Albany, New York in 2016, and from 2016 to 2019, coordinated the recovery of fresh fruits and vegetables from local farms, wholesalers, and other community partners for redistribution to food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters as Capital Roots Squash Hunger Coordinator. Since 2018, she has served as the market manager of the Schenectady Green Market, where she works to make fresh, local, and healthy food accessible for all. And she's the communications director at Soulfire Farm in Grafton, New York, where she supports programming that educates people on racism in our food system and provides BIPOC folks with the tools to be farmers and food justice leaders in their communities. She's also a part of a working group of Black food systems leaders developing an anti-racist toolkit for farmers markets in collaboration with the Farmers Market Coalition. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Would love it if you'd kick us off with a little bit about Soulfire Farm, your role, and a little bit of history of the farm and how you got involved.
Yes, so Soulfire was founded in 2010 by our amazing co-founders, Leah Penniman and Jonah Vitale-Wolf. And the farm was really founded out of a need that was expressed by the community that they were living in at the time, the south end of Albany, which was and still is a food desert, a predominantly Black and brown community where it's easier to acquire things like soft drinks and chips and fast food than it is to get access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And that's because the nearest grocery store is over a mile away. And if you don't have a car, that's a really significant barrier to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. So this was the case for Jonah and Leah and their family, and their only real option to get fresh fruits and vegetables was through a local CSA, community supported agriculture, which was definitely more that they could afford, but they didn't really have any other options. And the pickup point was like over 2 miles away, no car, and they had a newborn and a toddler at the time, that they were making this long journey to get this food. And the community they were living in, eventually word got around that Leah and Jonah actually know how to farm. So their community asked them, hey, how about y'all start this farm for the community and grow food for us? And Leah and Jonah, I'm pretty sure they were very hesitant at the time with all that they had going on in their lives, but they also were just really committed to their community and deeply cared. And so they agreed and started this farm for the people. Leah and Jonah, they gathered together what savings they had, got loans together, income from their jobs, ended up buying this pretty marginal, rocky, sloped land out in Petersburg, New York in 2006. And after about 4 years of really building up the infrastructure, improving soil health and all of that, the land became Soulfire Farm in 2010, and they began their journey in this important work of feeding people in their community. Now, my story in being connected with this work, I'm currently the communications director at Soulfire Farm. I say currently because I feel like my position has changed every year, literally since I started in 2019. So it might be different next year. But I joined in this work out of my belief that everyone deserves equal access to healthy food options. And unfortunately, this is not the case in this country. And we live in a society where there are families living under food apartheid. We use this term food apartheid, which really speaks to the fact that this system, our food system, it involves systemic racism and relegates predominantly Black and Brown communities to limited access to healthy food options, really causing our communities to experience higher rates of chronic illnesses like hypertension and diabetes, which are all really diet-related illnesses. And I feel like my family was no exception to this. My parents are immigrants from Jamaica, and my father has been living with diabetes since as long as I have been on this earth. And I remember growing up, my father worked multiple jobs to provide for his family. My mother also worked hard, labor-intensive jobs like cleaning houses. And even as hard as my parents worked, I remember nights when things like rice and canned salmon, corned beef were in pretty regular rotation on the dinner table. But I can't remember things like salads or variety of vegetables being a large part of my diet. And it wasn't really until I took a course in food insecurity in college that I really started to understand and even develop the vocabulary to articulate what my family was experiencing. And I feel for me, that's when I kind of felt that calling to do something to change this for other families who were experiencing this, which is part of the reason I got involved with Soulfire's food sovereignty work. And when I first moved out to the capital region, Albany, Troy area, upstate New York, in 2016, I worked for a food access organization. You mentioned Capital Roots, recovering food to bring to food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters. And I started managing a farmer's market in 2018 on top of this job. So really, this is a time for me to just get more deeply involved in our local food system, a time of learning and growing. In these jobs that I had, I noticed a pattern where the farmers that I was recovering food from were white farmers, and the people that I was recovering this food for were often folks living in low-income communities, and they were Black and Brown. So I feel like it was that line of questioning and realization that kind of led me to the work that I'm doing at Soulfire and wanting to be in that space, because it really became important to me to not only work for an organization led by Black, Indigenous people of color, but work for an organization that was really centering BIPOC in this movement for food justice and just working towards Black and Brown folks achieving equity and access to land and power in the food system. Lastly, I would say that I want to give a shout out to my ancestors as well for playing a role in the work I'm doing today. My grandfather and my grandmother were actually farmers on my dad's side. So I feel like it makes sense that at least one of my father's 6 children would be called to this work and would be called to being on the land.
Thank you for all of that and bringing our ancestors into this discussion. Your ancestors, I'm thinking about all of our listeners and maybe encouraging them to take a moment too to bring them into this conversation and maybe trace back in their lineage where farming happened or where a connection to the land happened. You spoke a little bit about, I would love to double click on the experience of working with a BIPOC-led organization and wondering if you have a point of comparison. Have you worked in organizations that don't have that leadership, and if how your experience has been different or why that's so important to you?
Yes, I feel that's really important to work for a BIPOC-led organization in this specific work of food justice, because again, a lot of the folks who are experiencing food insecurity, who are living under food apartheid, are people of color. I feel that it was, again, my own lived experiences that made me feel like this is something that I wanted to pursue in life. And being amongst other people who also share those values, but not just only sharing the values, actually having lived it is really important when you think about specifically Soulfire's work in trying to implement policy related to farmers and addressing food insecurity issues in our country. It's really important that the experts, when it comes to that work, are the people who actually experienced it. That's the way that you're really going to get the best policies to come forward that really speak to what the people need, because it's led by the people.
Absolutely. When I first reached out to you for this interview, you sent back this great document entitled The Beyond Heroes Guide. Can you talk a little bit about that guide and what it means? And I just want our listeners to hear these intricacies of the thoughtfulness at Soulfire Farm.
Yes. So our organization is pretty well known for our food justice work. And because of that, we often receive a flood of media and booking requests coming our way. And with those requests, we definitely noticed a pattern of folks really only wanting to speak to the co-founders, particularly Leah. And I mean, Leah is only one human holding so many different things, including managing a whole farm. And just also there are so many other amazing organizations out there doing this food justice work that also deserve recognition and are really incredible experts in this work. So I feel that the Beyond Heroes Guide was created with a lot of those themes in mind, where we're trying to shift media away from the hero narrative, this idea that the founder is the only one doing all of this work. So really getting folks to, for one, check that belief and instead consider involving other voices of folks on the team who are also responsible for making this work happen. And again, we also want to make sure we're sharing space with our other comrades in this work. So we often refer speaking opportunities to other folks in our networks instead of having someone on our team take it on. And by doing this, so far we've been able to redirect around 75% of media speaking requests to our comrades. So it's really, again, important that we share this space, this platform to uplift the voices of other folks making really incredible strides in this work. Lastly, I'll mention that this guide is actually a part of a larger series we launched this year to be really more transparent with community about ways that we're implementing different ideas and practices toward collective liberation, essentially. And this series is called our Praxis series. Within the series, we are sharing the guide, like the Beyond Heroes Guide. We're also sharing our equity guide for funders, which really just has some great questions for funders to think about before approaching BIPOC-led organizations to, again, have that internal conversation and check-in to make sure that you are really considering BIPOC folks' needs when you're someone with so much power and wealth, and considering where that power and wealth came from and how these grassroots organizations that you're reaching out to, how that wealth impacts them and their families. These guys are really just opportunities for us to be transparent with folks, and they are readily available on our website. We're sharing it on our Love Notes monthly newsletter, as well as our social media. Yeah, we want everyone to be able to see this and access it.
Incredible, Cheryl. Thank you for that work and that transparency. So critical, so critical. So even at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking a little bit about the many hats you wear and how sometimes you're on the farm and sometimes you're managing this amazing array of transmitting the information out to the world and communications. Is there anything you'd like to share about the balance between those two and what that looks like in your day to day?
Yeah, I will say that I really enjoy having that flexibility and balance of this work where one day I could be working on grants for the organization and dealing with communications with community and funders and helping out with fielding those media and booking requests I talked about earlier. And then the next day I can be at the farm actually having my hands in the land harvesting for our solidarity shares, which go out to community members living under food apartheid. I also feel that it's important that I have those moments, even though my work is mostly centered around being at a computer and doing grant writing. It's important that I also have those experiences actually out at the farm and being in touch with the land, because part of grant writing is storytelling. And the way that I become a more authentic storyteller is by actually having that experience and seeing firsthand it looks like to pack a CSA share, what it looks like to be at the farm during our immersion season where we're teaching folks from all over the country how to be farmers and food justice leaders, and having that one-on-one interaction and those experiences with folks is really important to the desk work that I'm doing.
I really got that sense when you were describing the media component and how you've been able to push out media opportunities to 75% of them out to other members of the community. I got this metaphor of like ecology, how, even like water, if it's concentrated in a steady stream and directed in one place, it can be actually really detrimental. Like it can be really burdensome on that one place. But if it's spread out across the landscape, then it's shared by all the microorganisms and plants. And what are you harvesting at the farm right now?
Right now, we actually had a CSA share go out today. We package for our Solidarity Share members every Thursday, and we're delivering again to folks in Albany, Troy communities living under food apartheid, folks who might be refugees or new Americans. This week, I believe we had a lot of good items in there, like string beans, Swiss chard, definitely some more broccolini, Brussels sprouts, hot peppers, lots of good stuff. And we also are giving folks eggs as well. And when we have it, we do have meat birds at the farm. So sometimes we'll be able to include our chickens from the farms in our share. But yeah, our Solidarity Share is really one of the most important programs I would say that we have at the farm, because again, it's what the organization was founded on, feeding the people. So through our Solidarity Shares right now, we are feeding about 25 families. And then through institutional partners like the Refugee Center in Albany, we're able to reach even more families. So it's probably closer to 60, 65 families that we're serving through this program. And prior to COVID-19, it was actually a sliding scale model where, folks who could afford it pay the higher end of what a share would cost, and folks would pay the actual cost of the share if they're able to afford it. And then those who didn't have the means to afford the cost of the share would pay a little bit lower than market value. So this made sure that it was affordable for everyone. But with COVID-19, we really felt the need to move towards making these shares free of charge for everyone that was participating. So in 2020, our Solidarity Shares took off, and we're doing this doorstep delivery to folks free of charge, which is really amazing and much needed right now during this pandemic.
Could you talk at all about the selection or application process for those shares? It's kind of mind-blowing. I imagine listeners are maybe wondering, like, how does that work? Free food, So share some insights with us about that.
Yeah, so it's really based on an honor system. It's self-reported income. So if you tell us that you are making below minimum wage, then we're going to believe that is the case. And we're prioritizing people who might be living in a home with other people that they're providing for, and they might have lost their job, or they have a job but it's not paying them enough. Again, prioritizing low-income populations, people who are new to this country, refugees, immigrants. We are really looking for folks who fit that description to be the people that we are really trying to get this food to. Before, it was a solidarity share model. When it was a sliding scale CSA model, obviously it was open to a lot more people because we needed folks who did have the means to be able to spend more on a CSA share to be able to offset the costs of the program. But now that we're doing this free of charge, that means looking at other sources of income to be able to subsidize the program. And for us, that looked like launching our online store last year, where we're selling medicinal teas and salves and merchandise to folks in our immediate community and of course, all over the country as well. So that's been a great way to be able to get our medicine out to folks who have really been asking for this for a long time. People come to the farm prior to having the online store and they're like, yeah, we really wish that we could have the opportunity to purchase teas from you and salves and things like that. Because before we would only make these products for folks who are participating in our CSA program or people who are coming for our immersion programs. But now we have the opportunity to make this more widely available to folks. And I believe last year we actually sold over 900 units of teas that we made from our farm just in our first year of launching this online store, which has been really amazing. And going back to all of the many hats that I wear, those numbers associated with the number of units we sold outside the online store is really important to me because that was one of the projects that I worked on, getting the store set up and having all the merchandise listed and everything and doing advertising. So it was really nice to see that it was well received by the community.
Congratulations. That's such an amazing achievement. I didn't even know that. And I've been paying attention as much as I could. But that's exciting that our listeners could even participate in some way and buy some of your teas. And I am curious, there's a question that just sparked, which is when the CSA moved from the sliding scale to the Solidarity Fund, where did those CSA members go that didn't participate in the Solidarity Fund? Did they go to supporting other locally owned BIPOC farmers? Or do you have any insight? Maybe you don't know, but maybe you have a sense of.
Yeah, I can't say for sure where everyone went, but I can say that after we made the transition of no longer having the CSA model, we did offer to community members the option to receive a voucher from Soulfire Farm to be able to purchase CSA shares from other local farmers in the area. Within the capital region, to be quite honest, there aren't many other BIPOC farmers. So it was probably mostly white farmers that folks might be purchasing from. But really the goal here was to make sure that people who wanted access to fresh fruits and vegetables but could no longer necessarily get it through our program, they were still getting that access. So that was really the priority.
I know you've got a lot of different people on your team doing various activities, so this might not be in your domain to speak about, but I imagine our listeners might be interested to learn about the BIPOC training programs for farmer training and how you've been activating the replication, if you will, of BIPOC farmers in other regions and other communities. Could you talk a little bit about those training programs?
Yes. So to start, I will say that 2021 was the first year since COVID-19 we've been able to host our training programs again. Last year they were canceled. So we're just really excited that we finished up our last cohort of this season for the Soulfire Farming Immersions about 2 weeks ago. But within these immersion training programs, it's an opportunity for folks from all over the country, whether they are aspiring, beginning, intermediate growers, but we're prioritizing Black, Indigenous, POC farmers to come and learn about regenerative farming practices at our farm, specifically Afro-Indigenous farming practices in a really culturally relevant, supportive environment. And by the end of the program, we make sure that folks are equipped with the knowledge to grow and prepare their own food and really have the tools to begin a comprehensive commercial farm if that's the path that they choose. And actually within our applications for the immersions, which I know very, very detailed because I was often the person reading all of the applications and selecting folks. So within our applications, we're asking people like, do you plan on making farming a career? Do you plan on using the skills that you learned here to be a food justice leader within your community? So we're prioritizing folks who really have that passion and drive to make farming or food justice work a career path for them. And yeah, it's also a place where we're trying to make sure that folks are in an environment where they can have that connection and healing on land. It's really important that we incorporate that into our curriculum, considering the trauma really rooted in oppression on land and just really taking steps toward folks who leave the program feeling like they have personal food sovereignty is a really important part of the work that we're doing with our farming immersions. And we also have an option for people who have participated in the immersions previously to come back as trainers through our Train the Trainer program. So these are people who have like over 2,000 hours of growing experience, and it's an opportunity for them to come back and, you know, be mentors for this next this next cohort of farmers and just build community and connection. And yeah, I would say of all the programming that we have at Soulfire, it's one of the most important pieces of our work, because at the end of the day, we are doing this to make sure that Black and Brown folks have a say, have stake in the food system. And that looks like more of us owning land, more of us being farmers, which right now the number of Black and Brown farmers in this country is extremely low. Black farmers, there's under 2% of farms owned by Black farmers right now, and this farming immersion is part of that work to reverse that dangerously low statistic and make sure that there's more of us with the ability to be farmers in this country. And I will say that in addition to our immersion programs, we recently launched our Braiding Seeds Fellowship, which is another huge part of our work in getting more Black and Brown farmers out there. And with this fellowship, it's in partnership with our friends in the South, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And we're really just providing folks with the resources, professional development, and mentorship to support their livelihood on land. This is our first year, and we just selected our first cohort of 10 folks from the Northeast to the Southeast. And within this program, folks are being given a $50,000 stipend, a menu of professional development opportunities like one-on-one to mentorship, workshops, business plan support, just everything that you'd really need to be able to support your livelihood as a farmer, because we want to set folks up for success. We want to make sure that they start this journey and see it through. So we're really excited about the Braiding Seeds Fellowship. Like, this is something we've been dreaming of for years, and it's finally happening.
Congratulations on that brilliant strategy to remedy some of those big obstacles and barriers for farmers. So well designed, well done. I wish you all the success in the world for you and for the fellows. Okay, I'm curious about decision making. at Soulfire Farm. Can you talk a little bit about your experience? And is it like normal, like top-down decision making, or is there some other strategies that you're employing to make decisions as a nonprofit that you're a part of?
Yeah, so at Soulfire, we have distributed leadership. You probably heard me mention earlier that we have co-directors. We don't just have one director at the farm. We're making sure that there's more than one voice being heard and being heavily involved in the decision making of the organization. As a nonprofit, we of course have a board, which is predominantly Black and Brown folks from the community, folks who have experienced food insecurity and are also people who are doing amazing work within their own careers related to food justice. Like one of our board members is one of the co-founders of the Black Farmer Fund. Karen Washington is our board president. Yeah, so just all these amazing folks coming together to help support and run this organization is really great. And yeah, for the employees at Soulfire, we're all involved in the decision making as well. The co-directors are the folks who are having those conversations with the board about policy changes, but every single step along the way, everyone on the team is being consulted. We most recently, actually this week, we had a staff survey about, reviewing the budget. Is there any line items that you would like to change? Or is there anything that you feel we should be including for 2022 that isn't included here? What are different ways that we can be changing our culture to make sure that everyone has a healthy work-life balance? Like, it's really amazing to me as someone who has come from nonprofits where my voice was never considered, that I'm included in all of these really important things that directly impact me. And I just feel very honored and grateful that I work for an organization that actually cares what I have to say about those things. So yeah, it's definitely distributed leadership. Everyone's voice is included. And there's also space to have your voice included in ways that feel most comfortable for you. So maybe you don't necessarily want to have a one-on-one conversation with a co-director about things that you want to change. You would feel more comfortable talking to a board member about it. Like, there's space for that flexibility to make sure that whatever feels good to you, we're making sure that your voice is included regardless.
My mind is blown. That is so radical to hear coming from the nonprofit space. So Thank you. Thank you for that leadership. I hope all of our listeners go home to their local nonprofits and say, hey, have you thought about transparency with financial management with all your employees? Have you thought about asking them how to improve quality of life? That is so great. Just a couple last questions. I know we need to wrap. You've shared so much of your beautiful insights and time with us. I'm curious what you're challenged by right now. Like, what are some maybe 2 or 3 things that are keeping you up at night, or like, what are some challenges that you experience in this role?
I feel that my number one challenge that I've always struggled with since day one is this feeling that I'm never doing enough, where a very small team. So as I've mentioned before, there's pretty much a lot of demand for our time, constantly requests for support, and it can be easy to fall into that trap of saying yes to everything and overextending yourself because you're just really personally connected to this work and you care so much, sometimes to your own detriment. I'm constantly worrying about if I'm doing too much or I'm doing too little with all the work and responsibilities that I'm holding at Soulfire and outside Soulfire. It's always a challenge to balance my multiple roles, and just also always worrying if my team feels supported by the work that I'm doing and making sure that I'm showing up in the ways that they need me. And sometimes that's not always communicated what is needed. So kind of reading in between the lines to see where you are actually needed to step in, or just asking frankly, like, hey, what is it that you need from me? Feeling comfortable to say that you see that there is a need and asking that person what they need from you sometimes can be a challenge, because I think for me personally, I worry about stepping on toes in any way or making folks feel like I'm trying to take work from them when really I just want to help. Just let me know what you need. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with, for me, trying to prioritize self-care. I'm trying to take that a lot more seriously because, if you're not getting enough rest and rejuvenation, like you're extremely exhausted and just struggling all the time, you're not really helpful to anyone. So you need to take that time for yourself to just, regroup and come back the next morning with fresh eyes. And I'm trying to actually incorporate into my work-life balance, which is always a challenge because I feel like I just want to just keep going all the time. And that's not healthy.
Thank you for that vulnerability. And one thing I heard you say, which is actually a pattern that's been echoed from other podcast guests that we've had sharing that wisdom, is that it's really hard to express our needs clearly with one another. For some reason, we've been trained that that's like inappropriate, and so I appreciate you highlighting that.
Yeah, it's that feeling of not wanting to be a burden in any way, I feel like. At least that's what it is for me when I struggle to express my needs. Like I start to do it, and as the words are coming out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that because now I've put something else on their plate and they have something else to worry about. So how do we navigate that?
Lifelong process. Thank you for, I think, naming it sometimes is an important part. Appreciating you. And also, of course, the self-care reminder. So good. I hope that you are able to, after this podcast, nourish yourself in whatever way it would feel best to you. And we always close by asking, what do you need right now? How can the listeners help you grow your work in the next economy? So are there a couple of things that could be supportive that you need from us?
Well, thank you for asking. I feel that my request for support is going to be centered around supporting Soulfire and the work that we're doing. If it's within your means, if you can donate to our work, we're gearing up to start thinking about 2022 planning for programming and immersions, our solidarity shares. So you can find more information about that on our website. And I would say it also is helpful to us when folks considering supporting other BIPOC-led food and farm-based organizations. Again, on our website, we have a list of other BIPOC-led orgs doing similar work, like the Northeast Farmers of Color Network, folks who are working on a permanent and secure land tenure for BIPOC land stewards. They also host the reparations map, which can be found on our website as well, which is an opportunity for folks with resources, whether that be money, land, to connect with people who are aspiring Black, Indigenous, POC farmers who might be looking for these types of support, to offer that to folks as reparations. So it would be great if you could check that out. Also, I would love for folks to check out our food sovereignty action steps, also on our website, for ways that individuals and organizations, institutions can really take steps towards dismantling racism in our food system. So I'll close by saying that, you supporting other folks in our ecosystem, other BIPOC food justice organizations and leaders, that also supports us too.
Beautifully said, Cheryl. Thank you so much for sharing with us today all of your insights and wisdom. Well, not all of it. I'm sure there's a lot more, but some of it, even just the little bit that you shared today. And it's been such a pleasure to have you on. I can't wait to see how the Braiding Seeds Fellowship goes and to continue to follow your work. We're so inspired by you all. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it was really nice chatting with you today.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Before you go, we wanted to let you know that our spring cohort of the Next Economy MBA begins on March 26th. If you're an entrepreneur seeking to create a business that works for all life, a member of a team looking to transition your organization into one that is more regenerative and democratic, or someone who's considering a career or livelihood transition and embodiment with your values, we designed this course for you. Over this 9-month learning journey, you'll have the chance to learn practical skills around business and life design based on our work with over 250 social enterprises. In addition to live sessions, you can deepen your experience and practice with special sessions, affinity groups, and connections with over 500 alumni who have participated in the course. Interested in learning more? Visit lifteconomy.com/MBA to view our course curriculum and sign up for a free intro with one of our facilitators. If you're ready to sign up, you can use the code PODCASTMBA to save 10% on tuition. We hope you'll join us.